I mean, after all the exercise and the meeting that you had, perhaps what is next, the next move that you're going into, yeah.
We had a stock take of the paper which addressed that question, the essential question: how do we update our relevance and what we would do? We felt that there were a number of areas we could expand in terms of non-conventional operations. HADR seems to be one clear focus, and in this particular exercise there was a HADR component. So I would, to briefly summarize, to say that we were aware of the new security challenges, but I would also like to ask my counterparts to give their views in terms of what next.
Well, thank you. Well, the Five Powers Defence Arrangement started, as previous ministers have said, as a result of the conventional security concerns for Malaysia and Singapore. These days we live in a modern world where there are many more concerns and challenges and issues than conventional security threats. Counter-terrorism, piracy, and these days in our part of the world, a consistent call for humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. And also new and emerging challenges, and cyber security and cyber threats is one of those. The real strength of the Five Powers Defence Arrangement is that out of those historical, conventional security challenges and threats has grown a very smooth-running, practical cooperation between five nations, which is easily able to be adapted to modern challenges. I think there is a lot of potential in terms of humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. All five countries in different ways face challenges caused by piracy, whether in this part of the world or off the Horn of Africa. And cyber security is not just a challenge for nations, it's a challenge for business and industry as well. From Australia's perspective, there are also those deep historical linkages. One of the things which works very well for Australia is the point that Dr. Ahmed has made, which is we have a regional organisation which has essentially a joint operations headquarters. And Australia has always had officials closely involved in the headquarters or HQ at Butterworth. Indeed, historically, there was a time when Australia had thousands of personnel, defence personnel, mainly Air Force personnel, at Butterworth. But at the integrated area defence system now, we have a small number of personnel, over 150, but working in a regional cooperative arrangement which is very practical. As a consequence, it's adaptable to new challenges and to circumstances which arise at short notice. And humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, I think, is uppermost amongst those.
Mr. Hammond, perhaps a few words?
Well, I think the importance of this 40th anniversary is that it is a moment not just to look backwards at the achievements, but to look forwards at the challenges. And clearly, if an organisation is going to be successful in a rapidly changing world, it has to be able to evolve to reflect the changing threats, the changing environment. And as we've already heard, that is about being able to respond to unconventional challenges in the future. It's going to be about reflecting the changed environment of Southeast Asia Pacific, the greater economic prosperity, the changing focus of potential flashpoints and conflict points in the area. And it's going to be about working out how the FPDA relates to other organisations, for example, the ADMM+, and how best to divide the responsibilities between the different organisations in the area. The UK is in a slightly different position as the only non-Asia-Pacific member of the arrangement. I think it's the Asia-Pacific members that will look to work out how to respond to these challenges primarily, and the UK will look to use FPDA as our link to the Asia-Pacific members and to provide our continuing political and military support to what the Asia-Pacific members are doing.
Thank you. Wayne?
The most important value of the FPDA is the fact that you've got 5 nations of common values, all members of the Commonwealth, who find this an effective means to work together. If we didn't have it, we actually would struggle to find opportunities to work together. We'd probably do it bilaterally, but we'd really do it as a 5 nations together. And so that's the baseline, if you will. Then the next question really becomes, so what are we working together for? And as you've heard, there are the contemporary challenges of HADR. There are also the greater risks that I mentioned earlier, such as working together in Afghanistan. All 5 nations are there in one way or t'other, and we all work together there as well. And as has already been alluded to by all of us actually, is the way that the FPDA locks into the broader regional or security architecture, which is actually all about assuring people that we can be trusted, that we're reliable, that we can be counted on when things go wrong.
I have a question for you guys. Of course, FPDA were created 40 years ago to defend Malaysia and Singapore from external aggressions. So my question is, what is the level of commitments of the members of FPDA, especially UK, Australia, and so on, to assist Malaysia and Singapore? Hypothetically, if we were so-called attacked or harmed by certain aggressive nation. Thank you.
Politics 101, never answer hypothetical questions, so let's not answer that. But the essential question, how committed are you, friends, if we get attacked? Perhaps I'll ask Minister Hammond.
Well, of course, Dr. Ng is perfectly correct, never answer a hypothetical question. But the whole purpose of FPDA is to represent 2 potential threats to the security of Singapore and Malaysia, a united front and an awareness of the commitment of other nations to the security of Malaysia and Singapore. It is not a tripwire response organization in the way, for example, that NATO is under Article 5. So it is primarily about demonstrating a political resilience. It is about preparing a coordinated military response through these exercises so that there is a credible, there's a possibility of presenting a credible case for a coordinated military response. But clearly the reality of the context in which we exist is that this is about sending a signal of deterrence and standing shoulder to shoulder, exercising together in the way that FPDA does, which I think is pretty much unparalleled in the region, is hopefully still, after 40 years, a valuable addition to Malaysia and Singapore's security, simply by demonstrating that level of solidarity.
A very interesting question, which can actually be answered by history. All members of the FPDA in history have actually protected each other when called upon. You only have to think of Malaya and, of course, Konfrontasi from the 1960s. When the call was required, it was answered. And FPDA has its origins directly from that. But, of course, it has a contemporary dimension because we are no longer in the 60s. So whilst that fundamental condition, I'm sure, prevails, it's not actually the expectation that would be occur now, but rather a better way of thinking about it in the contemporary form is the way it locks together the 5 nations as part of the broader regional architecture. And the reason I emphasise that is because it's from that actually you get sort of the piece. If I was sort of to answer in part the last question, the way to deal with these challenges is you start off with a rules-based system. That's international law, self-evidently. And then the next part is you've got to have an enforcement mechanism. Well, the regional security architecture is actually that enforcement mechanism, and it's achieved by ensuring people working together. But as I think you can find the answer to your question quite comfortably, in fact, in what actually happened in the past, because I'm sure, should that ever occur in the future, the same answer would be provided.
Thank you. Minister Smith.
Well, in the Australian context, I simply echo the sentiments of my colleagues from the United Kingdom and New Zealand.
Well put. Thank you.
Your Excellency, Mr. Ng. I am from the Malaysia-based Chinese paper, China Press. My name is Mr. Koo. So in the morning meeting, is there any South China Sea dispute issue has been particular to be voiced out during the meeting?
Perhaps I can give a quick reply to that. The answer was that it wasn't addressed directly because it's not under the remit and the mandate for the FPDA arrangement. I think my colleague, Minister Hammond and Smith, have eloquently articulated the FPDA. Let me remind people that in the context of FPDA, it's a consultative arrangement in the first level. But that doesn't detract from the commitment to be able to come to the defense of Malaysia and Singapore if it is necessary. As a proxy, one only needs to look at the amount of effort, resources that we put into our exercises. The current Bersama Lima, you talk about 4,000 people, 67 ships, 67 aircraft, 18 ships, 2 submarines. You don't do this if you're not committed.
Hi, sirs. My name is Kimberly. I'm from the Straits Times in Singapore. All of y'all in your opening addresses talked about, the need to keep the FPDA relevant with new challenges like cybersecurity, terrorism, things like that. May I just ask you all, can you tell us how the FPDA has been working together to achieve this or to address these problems, these non-conventional threats? Thank you.
I'll just give some quick remarks and then perhaps my colleagues may have views. This was the area of the stock take that we felt that we should develop capacity and confidence in. In other words, we acknowledged that there were security challenges which may impact on the FPDA as we move forward for us to remain relevant. We will have to leave it to officials, exercises to work out the practical arrangements in terms of the direction that we want to go. But recognition and acknowledgement of the challenges and the fact that the FPDA has to update itself in its processes to address these challenges was, I think, a significant step in this 40th anniversary and 8th FPDA. Any other comments from other ministers?